A city in Oregon that had stuck landlords with the tenants' utility debt decided to use pandemic relief funds to pay that debt off. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. So I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Oregon. Now, I covered another article where a city, they had basically been charging landlords the utility bills and, making landlords responsible for the utility debts of tenants who didn't pay them, okay? So this city in Oregon, they have a similar policy. But the difference between this story and that story is that they decided they were actually going to use the pandemic relief funds that they were given in order to pay these debts off that these landlords owed. So what was happening was, they put all these eviction moratoriums in place. These tenants didn't pay rent, they didn't pay their utilities, but they didn't turn those utilities off. So then the tenants, when they finally did move out, guess what? They stuck the landlord with those bills. I mean, that's not even right in any way, okay? So it boggles my mind that they would think, it's perfectly fine that these tenants get to live 100% for free and, face zero consequences. Then we're going to bill the landlords on top of them not receiving any rent. I mean, that's crazy. But that's exactly what they did. So finally, somebody with a little bit of common sense says, maybe, all this money that we got, this pandemic relief funds from the federal government, maybe we should use that to pay these unpaid utility bills. And in some cases, it was thousands of dollars worth of unpaid utility bills that these tenants stuck on these landlords. This is the exact reason why I'm opposed to the rent relief programs, but hey, if you created this problem by putting these pandemic eviction moratoriums in place and telling these tenants they didn't have to pay anything, well, who gives you the right to then say, the landlord gets stuck with this utility bill? Okay, that's a joke and it's wrong, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? Do you think that cities all across the entire country, where they had these eviction moratoriums in place, do you think the city should have used those pandemic relief funds to maybe help the landlords in some way? Okay, rather than just saying, maybe we're gonna help these tenants out, but they didn't put a moratorium on property taxes. They didn't put a moratorium on any of the landlords' bills that they had to absorb. Okay, so maybe they should have said, these utilities that we are charging the landlord, we're gonna put a moratorium on the landlord having to pay them because we put a moratorium on the landlord being able to collect rent. Okay, maybe they should have done that, but they didn't. Okay, they don't care about landlords in most of these places. And Oregon, as you know, is one of the most left-leaning progressive places in the entire country. So it doesn't surprise me that, they have all these anti-landlord laws in place. Anyway, this article is coming from cronline.com, and it says, Chehalis City Council votes to pay off utility bills for landlords left with balances by tenants during pandemic. Yeah, interesting situation. Yes, these landlords, they needed to have these utility bills nullified. I mean, they shouldn't have ever had the bills in the first place. These bills should have followed the tenants. But because they did, the city is obligated to pay these bills off. But anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. The Chehalis City Council voted Monday to use coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds created by the American Rescue Plan Act to pay for the overdue utility balances of 21 Chehalis landlords who were left with utility bills that were unpaid by their tenants during Governor Jay Inslee's COVID-19 state of emergency proclamations. As of April 4th, there were 21 closed tenant accounts in Chehalis with unpaid utility bills that landlords were left with. City policy states that landlords are responsible for whatever utility bills their tenants leave unpaid when moving out. In all, the council voted to pay off $21,158 worth of unpaid bills. That's not a large amount, but guess what? To a small mom and pop landlord who owns one property, if you owe a couple $1,000s on an unpaid utility bill by a tenant, that's devastating to you, okay? One property, that's all you have. You weren't getting any rental income as long as that person was stuck in your place during the eviction moratorium. And so now you got to pay their utilities on top of that. That's a contract between the tenant and the utility company, not between the landlord. This city policy, it's a cash grab, okay? Forcing people who didn't accumulate this debt to pay the debt for somebody else. That's stupid, okay? And I said that in the other video as well. And I hope that this sort of law gets overturned and thrown out. So yeah, this city absolutely should be paying this amount of money for all these landlords. And they should get rid of that law too. Inslee issued numerous emergency orders at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. They included a proclamation for ratepayer assistance and preservation of essential services that prohibited the termination of most utilities due to non-payment in an attempt to aid those economically impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So you see right there what he said, okay? The utilities can't be turned off for non-payment. But at the same time, the landlord can't evict for non-payment. So we have a bunch of tenants, right? And in this case, there's 21 accounts. I don't know how big this city of Chehalis is, right? It might be a small town, right? So we have 21 tenants there, right? Who said, hey, I'm not going to pay rent. I'm not paying my utility bills. I'm not paying anything. Now, whether they lost their jobs or not, guess what? This utility company still wanted its money. And rather than saying, hey, we created this problem. The city, this is a city utility. Rather than saying, hey, we created this problem, we're going to pay these bills. They said, no, we're going to, confiscate this landlord's money. No, they never had the contract for the utilities. We're going to take their money anyway. Like I said in my other video, that's stealing, okay? These cities are literally stealing money from small mom and pop landlords, okay? And these tenants were, taking advantage of this whole thing so they could live for free for as long as possible. And nobody saw any problem with it. That's how blinded they were. That's how ridiculously far left-leaning progressive they are. And that's how socialist they are, okay? They want the government to take over. They want the government to pay for everything. So they don't care if these landlords go out of business. Okay, that way they can push in more of these ridiculous socialist policies. When this ratepayer moratorium ended on September 30th, 2021, unpaid utility bills became subject to shutoffs and late payment fees in January. To assist in the burden that unpaid utility bills cause the city's utility customers, Chehalis provides a payment plan option over 18 months through June 2023 for balances accrued during the COVID-19 pandemic. For utility customers who are on the payment plan and make the planned payments, there are no shutoffs or late fees on the balances owed. Yet some tenants in Chehalis did not take advantage of the payment plan and left their landlord with the bill, leading to the council's decision to pay the remaining non-payment plan balances of the affected landlords with SLFRF funds, totaling $21,158. Yeah, and that's exactly what they should have done. But like I said before, this law should have never been in place in the first place, okay? Go after the people who actually owe the money. Otherwise, don't even allow them to... If they aren't going to be responsible for this bill, if they leave, then what's the incentive for them to ever pay? There's zero. I mean, zero. They can stick the landlord with that bill and they can just run away. And don't they realize that is the flaw in this whole system? So, you need to put some of the, pressure onto these tenants to pay their bills. And the only way to do that is by sending the debt collectors after them, ruining their credit, doing whatever it takes to get your money back. And then maybe less of them will choose to skip out without paying those bills, okay? This policy has been prepared for your consideration in response to comments made when the payment plan policy for utility customers was put into place back in the second half of 2021. City Manager Jill Anderson told the council when introducing the measure. So at the time, City Council asked for a plan to be able to use ARPA monies to help landlords who had been left sort of holding the bag after the extended proclamations preventing late fees on utility bills, evictions, etc. Sort of holding the bag? They were holding the whole bag. Okay, who do they think was holding the bag if not the landlord? Landlord was holding the entire bag. Anderson said the policy requires the affected landowners to complete an application and sign an affidavit saying they were impacted negatively by COVID-19. This is consistent with the laws that we believe apply to a program of this type and to protect the city from any kind of audit finding related to the use of this money, because while the money was given out very generously, the reporting of this money is quite extensive and the follow-ups on federal audit requirements are quite intense, Anderson said. You could be audited on where this money is going. Well, see, that's part of my problem with all this rent relief stuff, right? They made it difficult for landlords to be able to obtain these funds. They made it difficult for the local jurisdictions to distribute the funds. And the result is lots of delays, lots of landlords going months or years on end without getting a single penny. So, yeah, it's good that they finally decided, hey, we're not going to punish these landlords who suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic when we wouldn't turn utilities off and we didn't demand the tenant pay anything. But you know what I say, right? We got to go after those tenants. You got to teach them a lesson. You have to pay your own bills. You cannot live for free, regardless of what you think. Okay? They cannot live for free. You cannot be 100% dependent on the government. If you lose your job, you need to go get another job. Okay? That's the way the real world works. This isn't a place where, hey, the government or the landlord or someone else is always going to be taking care of you.